This video is sponsored by Crimson Manifesto, Knuckles OX, and Baba Snake. We resume as the very air is electrified by the excited cheers of the crowd, even though all that's happening is the drawing of names out of a box and jotting them down their placements, which is admittedly a bit boring. So the tourney announcer relies on special guest co-commentator Mr. Bruce Chun, brother of the current champion, and a renowned fighter in his own right, to help fill the time, asking his opinions on the top 8 contenders. Bardock is at first reluctant to open up and actually commentate, while also keeping up his monkey-tailed earthling ruse, and as an ex-soldier, not feeling it proper to disclose the secrets and livelihood, or boast for other warriors' sake. But if he's gonna have his arm twisted, he can spare some words of praise and recognition for all these fighters, which causes many amongst the competitors to appear bashful and embarrassed from hearing this guard Saiyan talk them up to the crowd, while the likes of Master Shen instead spent this time politely asking Chaozu for something. Thanks to Bardock, the announcer and tourney officials are brought enough time to drop their brackets, and so snagging back the momentum of the event, get the excitable commentator to announce their matchups of Shadi versus Master Shen, Son Goku versus Son Gohan, Bryce Lieu versus Master Roshi, and Son Gojo versus Son Emu, as he then calls the green-haired newcomer Knockout and old Crane Hermit to remain on stage and prepare to go at it. Excitedly, the other competitors clear away from the ring, while the tourney announcer continues to play up how interesting this matchup is, a point Bardock agrees with, mostly because he's well acquainted with one fighter, but not the other, and he can sense some things his co-commentator can't. As the match begins and the two face off, Moozley's eyes narrow at the Crane Hermit, who begins to sweat nervously, all of a sudden attempting to be as mean and crass an old hermit as he usually is, but failing horribly at it, which causes the Cerelian to smirk, as she figures out the illusion going on here pretty quickly, and so rushes in to engage her opponent, who deftly tries to fend off her pinpoint and aggressive blows, as she's taking well to close quarters combat, thanks to all her intense practice in it with so many teachers, and the same desire to rely on less key attacks, or at least very strong and destructive ones around all these bystanders that her other companions and rivals at. While Master Shin is doing his best to adapt to this, it's clear there is a gap in strength, even with the sudden boost he mysteriously got, as if he'd been suppressing a great deal of power all this time, though he wasn't applying it in his usual way, like his own body and techniques were foreign to him, really leaving him only the option of seeking a quick and painless elimination by ring out. However, due to her eyes, perception closely rivaling Granola's, and much more important, her intuition, Moozley aims her next cleanup kick carefully, not at Master Shen's head, but seemingly at the head of his crane hat, which whisked past even that, to strike, and thud off nothing but air, causing it to then shimmer and mirage in the shape of a large humanoid, reeling behind the Crane Hermit, who just as suddenly flops to the ground, already unconscious. Smiling, Moozley asks what on earth will possess her old friend to possess someone else to enter the tournament, as having struck the very space between the Earthling and Namekian using some kind of strange technique to take control of the glasses-clad old man. Monaito is revealed, still a bit woozy from being struck by Moozley's attack, directly through the boundary between himself and Shen, as he apologizes profusely, while the crowd and announcers seem to be utterly shocked, and thus look to an exasperated Bardock for an explanation. Bowing his head to Moozley, Monaito admits to having been worried about Granolah, since he received no small amounts of visits last time he focused on training at the Crane School, though now he's becoming so single-minded and ambitious as to neglect allowing himself to rest, or celebrate the accomplishments he's already made. Nodding sagely, as she figured something like that was the case from the Green Softie, the Cerelian cites having similar worries, but also that it probably wouldn't be fair to offer the boy guidance in the guise of someone else just because he hasn't come to you. Though, she supposed the Namekian may have been a bit uncertain or shy about entering and competing in front of all these people, just like Piccolo, a statement that earns her an embarrassed gripe from the cloaked green man sitting next to our heroes in the crowd. Agreeing with Moozley, Monaito decides to apologize to the other participants and spectators, before politely disappearing with a Z vanish as to cause no further trouble, leaving Master Shin, who now wakes back up devoid of the boost he was getting from his possession, as well as his own politeness. Though in light of everything, he is offered to either keep fighting Moozley, which will surely end badly for him in front of everyone, or take a DQ for technically breaking the rules and having outside help. Shin agrees to the DQ to save face, and thus retires from the tournament, while fuming hearing Roshi cackle and the members of his school seemingly unfazed by this disgrace on him. As the confusion mounts, Moozley under her earthling guise as the housemaid Shadi takes a flippant bow and her leave from the stage, and with a cheeky wink towards Bardock he isn't expecting, almost as if she's apologizing for the hassle, whilst at the same time, because they are both equally excited, Goku and Grandpa Gohan make their way onto the stage before their match is even introduced, sparing the need for explaining the sudden appearance of an obvious alien or demonic being. The two members of the Son family thus hurry the announcers along into beginning the next round, as Grandpa has been let down a great deal in both not getting to face Master Shin, or even see if he's pushed further beyond like the rest of the Earthlings. However, a match with his grandsons is never one to disappoint, and now that he's feeling a lot more spry thanks to Roshi and his family's care, he's in greater fighting form than ever before, which serves as a testament to his having the skill to eliminate some of the fighters he'd faced to reach the top 8, like Anon and the talented young Krillin, whilst Goku of course always revels in a chance to push himself against so many of the strongest people he knows. Hence, when a slightly blushing Bardock nudges the announcer to get on with it and not worry about the details over his head, the man decides what the hey, and thus more quickly sets the new round to start, in which both sides can't help but dash to meet each other in the center of the ring, where they clash against each other, and then seamlessly backflip away to land in their stances with practice ease. This only signaling the first of many such engagements, as with obvious familiarity, the old man and young boy take to fighting around the ring like true martial arts masters in the primes of their lives. As son Gohan, despite his age, very much lives up to his legendary existence as one of the first disciples of the Turtle Hermit. However, young son Goku, now at the age of only 9, also shows an immense amount of strength, talent, and growth from the last Budokai, gleefully dodging around attempts to grab his tail or throw him with what seems like sheer monstrous battle instinct. Perfect performance in order to win several extremely high-speed games of John Kenpo, and now even showing adaptation to taking on larger opponents with longer limbs after battles against figures much taller and lankier than him, from the sword-swinging Cinnamon to the giant robot Dr. Wheeler, seeing him eventually able to outfox and outperform even his intelligent old grandpa in strength, agility, dexterity, and physique. In the face of this showing from Goku making it clear knockout isn't likely, though Gohan is proud, he still wants wholeheartedly to compete and challenge his grandson with his all, and so tries to ring him out if nothing else. Even so, it's quickly become clear that Goku's youth will allow him to withstand even the most skillful and practiced of techniques. Meanwhile, in the crowd, as he watches Goku's match, a cloaked King Piccolo is joined by another green-skinned figure under lighter ropes to hide himself, a somewhat embarrassed Monaito joining him and the others to watch the matches up close, rather than from the lookout with comment, though the other Namekian's presence disturbs the demon, as he's honestly a bit miffed he didn't think of his trick, as it could have maybe allowed him to make Bardock enter and give him a chance to take on Son Goku as well, a prospect Monaito doubts would have worked or ended well for him, though this seems to give Piccolo a new ski. As assigned to be a bit more subtle than Monaito, he materializes his ki into a gentle spear, and then fires it into the flagging old man, fighting against young Goku on the stage. The result isn't damage, but a temporary amp in ki and strength, as the Demon King has entrusted even some of his will to challenge the Son Shun cereal clan in his donated energy. That shared desire to make sure Goku is given the experiences he needs to grow, and more importantly, has fun, being the only reason Grandpa Gohan accepts this sly handout, using it to suddenly gain a burst of speed in order to chop Goku in the neck as a guard break, before using the flight taught to him by Raditz to drive the boy's small body off the ground with a series of launching attacks that juggle him, finally exposing his tail to be grabbed, and for Gohan to slam him around by it like Bryce Lieu did, if not harder. However, in this too, the youngest member of the family shows growth from last time, using a final counter for even the weakness of his tail, via exerting all his ki through it to strengthen and allow him to coil it around Grandpa's arm, where he then reverts the attack into a dragon throw, redirecting all of that momentum into sending Grandpa Gohan flying out of the ring too fast for unmastered flight to save him. This makes Goku part of the top 4, and Piccolo, his grandpa, and the rest of his family are very proud of him. However, after such a feat, he's left rather drained and didn't need the break the last 2 matches would give him before he's up again. Eventually, he comes backstage, already holding his grumbling stomach and panting, to which Raditz and Granolah tease him lightly for. But this just gets the youngest laughing at them and joking back that he should go and ask his mama for a snack and not share, since they're being so mean. Hearing this, Bryce Lieu sees Kakarot perk up and prepare to dart off to where he thinks she really is. Though having accounted for this, she rather trippily slides in his way and shoves a bowl of rice in his face, reminding him that it's not polite to rush or interrupt people, and it'd be rude to ignore the matches of his fellow tournament participants for a snack as well, so he should just tide himself over with this from now. Then, her name is announced alongside Master Roshi's, and the two leave for the ring. Instantly, the 3 brothers are shocked by how casually their mysterious family member approached them, as if they're already way too accustomed to her presence. For Goku, though, he's a bit too preoccupied munching on his snack and smacking Raditz's hand away from it, as he was serious about not sharing, whilst the likes of Granolah, like the last time the masked Saiyan was present, is suspicious, as he's seen those Apex Hunter-like movements before. Out on stage, just as much as the crowd, Muten Roshi is very excited for obvious reasons, to the point he really isn't sure if this is Gine, whether Bryce Lieu exists, or was a man in the first place, but the opponent that stands before him certainly isn't. While Gine is also pumped for this fight, since this is after all sweet little Kakarot's first ever teacher, as well as the man who set Bardock on a better path alongside Grandpa Gohan, so she wants to show him a great deal of respect and honor. Besides this, under her guidance is Bryce Lieu, the son, or now daughter of Jackie Chun. She is also technically meant to treat Roshi as her uncle, so once again, unlike his last appearance, the masked fighter is very friendly and respectful as he bows and greets Roshi in the match's opening. In honor, the Turtle Hermit returns in kind, while blushing bashfully and trying to get a look from as low angle as possible. Then, just as quickly, the two rush to meet each other in the center of the ring, or at least, Gine had thought they would, as instead of testing his strength against hers, Roshi slides between her legs and under her dress at the last second, weaving around her for a pot shot in the rear, making her yelp out of shock and lose focus in a very non-Bryce Lieu-like like mana. Much like Celipa randomly enough, Roshi seems able to balance and fuel the patch of his defense and offense with his lecherous desires. Thus, the motivation of getting in a few feels of his knockout opponent's body as they attack and wrestle around each other is seemingly enough to empower and embolden this earthling all on its own. At first, she lets this slide out of respect and her own overly nice nature until it continues to happen a few too many times, until finally she decides to just go for a ring out rather than a clobbering knockout like her usually quiet Saiyan instincts are roaring out for. But the issue with this is that Master Roshi shows just as much wily ability to dodge and elude as Kakarot's, and combined with his getting far too familiar is making her only more frustrated and likely to miss her much more powerful attacks. But the act of thinking about her older sister figure gives Gine a plan, and so she suddenly shifts her Bryce Lieu persona a bit, acting more like a professional female Frieza Force soldier, and getting Roshi to lower his guard by mentioning how naughty an old man he is, after lifting her mask just enough to blow a kiss, which predictably gets Roshi's nose to bleed so hard as to make him fly temporarily, and throwing his rhythm completely off as he's put in a love-struck haze, allowing Gine to suddenly close the distance and apologize sweetly before making his nose bleed all the more, as Roshi is wrung out with a punch to the snoz that sends him in a red spiral towards the announcer's table, where Bardock quite worriedly catches the old man, with a plea for him not to die of blood loss in his punch-drunken stupor, though Roshi rather cartoonishly holds up a finger with a declaration of what a woman, before passing out. On his own, the classic announcer gives Bryce Lieu her due and plays to the top 4, as the masked Saiyan woman takes a bow and kindly waves to them before politely making her way off the stage. Meanwhile, Roshi is passed off to Grandpa Gohan and the Ox family to be tended to, as suddenly, despite the returning champ having had a match, it seems like everyone is more excited for the final battle of the top 8, and a rematch between two fighters who opened the top 8 of the 19th Budokai 3 years ago, as Son, Gojo, and Amu make their way out in a prideful strut and focus march respectively, with this match having so much fanfare around it already, and the last being a true nail-biter. The announcer once again asks for Bardock's analysis of the matchup. Thoughtfully, Bardock offers that like Goku, he's pretty much helped raise these two fighters, and in fact, he used to have to fight the little brats off as a team just about every morning, so he knows their strengths and weaknesses well, though both are now much more independent in their training, and a glance is enough to tell them they changed a lot. Beyond this, the two are already sworn rivals to the point they fought each other countless times outside of this ring. This shocks the audience, as the two square up, obviously ready to go, but genuinely curious. The classic announcer has to know who Bruce Chun favors to win here, and thinking carefully, Bardock cops out to truly answer, instead flippantly stating the winner is obviously going to be whoever wants to win today more, before turning his attention skyward. There, high in the air, flaps the black wings of the Devil Man, as for some reason, the attention-seeking pervert is viewing the festivities in a place where he won't be noticed by anyone, unable to sense ki, which is fine by him, simply seeing Bardock mutter that he certainly started hanging around a ton of weirdos when he got to this planet, a claim the announcer sweat drops he doesn't think the monkey-tailed man can make, before Bardock huffs and casually tells the boys to quit glaring at each other and just get on with it, a signal the two boys take happily, as much like those before them, they begin their match with a clashing test of speed and strength in the center of the ring, as the eternal rivals face off again, as if their last Budokai match hadn't even ended, at first running back the exact same fight, where they try to leverage their powers and skills against one another, with that being Raditz's raw strength and wit, and Granola's shocking speed and dexterity. And also like last time, this sees them fighting on pretty clearly even ground. As Bardock said, the difference maker surely coming down to the respective power of their wishes to win. That is until both deem it finally time to show off their growth, despite having wanted to save their new trump cards for the finals, a prospect which makes both members of the Crane School and Satan Castle watching their representatives rather anxious or excited. For Raditz, this growth is showing the culmination of his goal to try tapping into and controlling the inner power of his Uzaru without the need of the full moon while in his normal base state, and keeping his mind the entire time while doing so. Basically, the Uzaru punch Goku did in canon against King Piccolo, but closer to fully mastered, into more of a spirit of the Saiyans technique or form, if you will. The very thing he endured grueling training under Spiteful to obtain control over his inner demons. And with that, much more power than he could have ever mustered before, as he is willing to bet the outcome of this match on a key empowered fist that Mr. Satan in March State will make his dynamite punch look like a love tap. In turn, Tal and the Crane students prepare to boast for their own rep, but suddenly taking on her evil form, the blonde launch barks at them all to hush and not spoil things, as in the ring, the Cerelian boy is happy to see his rival's progress, but finally feels it necessary to spoil for Raditz that this won't go like last time, whilst reaching up and tugging on the bandages over his eyes with one hand, and making a taunting beckoning motion with his other, that causes the Saiyan to bristle angrily, asking Raditz if he's wondered about why on earth he's wearing them yet. Scoffing at this lame distraction, the hedgehog-like Saiyan snarks back, not imagining they were meant to be more than some kind of excuse about something being in his eyes when he loses. But Granolah actually laughs with him, before correcting that these are in truth training weights he's been using to help him reach the point he foresaw he would need to in order to surpass him, as with a pull to the side, his bandages move down enough to reveal his left eye is now red like his right, showing Granolah has forcibly attained a budding and unstable mastery of a strange dual red-eyed state, doubling the range and depth of his perception, and thus increasing the efficiency and accuracy of his attacks to power him up even further. And even more impressively, the ability to read a target's motor radius potential, allowing him to virtually read their minds and see see the future of anyone caught in his gaze. So when Raditz finally decides to rush him with that explosive Uzaru fist, in order to reclaim his glory as the honored one Son Gojo from last tourney, Granolah has already positioned himself perfectly and pulls off a flawless split-second counter to Raditz's attack, seeing it just barely graze Granolah's cheek, while he strikes Raditz in the chest, dead on a weak point, that makes Raditz's heart skip several beats, forcing him to go down for a clean but subtle knockout, as despite his strength, for Bardock's claims, no one knows the long-haired Saiyan, or his weakness is better than the Cerelian, whose left eye aches painfully, as he's forced to power down to his base form and cover it back up, a sight Moley and Monaito seem both shocked and a bit worried about, while in the very edge of the crowd, nearly outside the arena, two new mysterious cloaked figures seem to be even more interested in the outcome of this match than them somehow. Thankfully, it doesn't take much more than a few slaps on the cheek to wake Raditz up, though surprisingly, thanks to his training with Devilman and prior loss to his uncle, he seems much more at peace with recognizing his limits and even congratulates the successes of others now, even encouraging Granolah not to lose to anyone else and embarrass him now, with a reluctant fist bump before he departs to join their friends and family in the crowd. With the top four now established and the day half over, he's decided to break for an early supper now to make certain they finish the tournament in one day, if all the most ravenous appetites are satisfied now and burned off in the final three fights. This is Gine's cue to make a hasty retreat to the kitchen to try and maintain her alibi. To her credit, arriving and making good on her fib, since with superhuman speed and culinary skill, she's able to contribute a great deal of food to the feast, about as quickly as she did Kakarot's emergency rations, and being behind a kitchen counter with an apron on prevents her from needing to change clothes to boot. So for the next hour and a half or so, the remaining fighters stuff their faces and enjoy themselves, since with the tourney being pretty much all in the family once again, it may as well be just another raucous and roaring party, one everyone is so excited for. They pledge to keep it rocking even after the tournament is closed out. Munching away on his food, Bardock knowingly asks Gine where she thinks his sister is right now, to which she coolly responds, "Oh, you know Bryce, always a loner. She's probably off eating with Devilman, Piccolo, and Monaito," to which Bardock supposes hanging out with that bunch would suit such an odd person, once again making the announcer say that this is odd coming from him, and keeping the laughs going. So with a quick refueling, we find ourselves right back in the middle of the action, as the semi-final matchups of Shadi vs Amy and Bryce Lieu vs Goku are announced, which sees the young son Goku so utterly excited for this rematch that he accidentally runs on stage before Granolah and Musa can make their way out there. However, being used to this kind of thing by now, the mother and son are fine to go second, seeing Moley pretty casually shove Bryce out on stage with Goku, as she's still adjusting her mask and patting flour off her jacket, now getting accustomed and even more endeared to the wild hijinks of this seemingly nepotistic and forcefully diverse tourney as it was originally dismissed. The crowd begins to also feel Goku's excitement as the underdog, which makes Gine's heart swell with pride, as they cheer for the match to begin and the young Saiyan warrior to do his best, and the gong for the match sounds. Instead of rushing into a clash, Gine continues to show how well she knows her baby, as she mirrors him and dropping into the crazy monkey stance perfect before they start stalking around each other, looking for an opening. Then, upon feinting one for the other, the two both pounce at after images, subsequently parrying the kick and punch of the other in a way that makes them cheer and praise the other's form and power. Though this out-of-character act once again shocks Goku, as with a more discerning eye picked up from his brothers, he leans in and sniffs his opponent suspiciously, asking if this nice lady is really his Uncle Bryce. Puffing her cheeks at her son beneath her mask, Gine asks if Goku wants her to be as mean as last time to prove it, causing him to hesitate and hide his tail for a split second by instinct, in which Gine lands a clean blow that makes it clear Mama is still stronger, as the boy is sent flying much like his grandpa and Roshi were. Even so, Goku actually continues to do extremely well here, riding himself in a well-practiced motion with both flight and effort from his tail to propel it, to just narrowly avoid a ring out and send himself rocketing right back into the fray, with each time this happens again, forcing him to adapt and try to make another powerful comeback. The family's youngest Saiyan can do this, both because of his own pure unadulterated fighting and martial arts talent, and also his ability to be a perfect copycat, and use monkey see monkey do tactics to learn quickly from the strong, now seeing him adapting Gohan and Roshi styles, which help them to perfectly control the ring. Whilst realizing his physical might is not enough, he also shows hints of influence from his brothers, by resorting to a Kamehameha from far away. One Gine easily dodges it first, only for the boy to cunningly bend it to follow her. Thus the cycle continues into a battle of attrition, as Gine once again fails to emulate Bryce Lieu's particular killer instinct from last time, and Goku has been preparing for that specifically, though this is not to say his mother is no challenge, since she has after all watched and supported his dreams as a martial artist since day one, and still keeps growing stronger herself. So before long, no matter how much he wants to keep going, the boy is left out of breath and wheezing, with his clothes in complete tatters, so flimsy one more violent exchange will surely render him in the buff, on top of unconscious. Even so, thanks to supposedly newfound instincts as a motherly aunt, Bryce Lieu reveals she perfectly predicted this outcome for Goku as well. So when she charges in to clash the boy, coming in to desperately bite at her this time, it is while reaching into her gi, and showing off that she has already prepared to change the clothes for her son she urges him to put on, in the form of a devastatingly heavy finishing blow to the gut, that knocks him out and makes him rather easy to change in a flash. So that all too suddenly, things do feel like the 19th all over again, as with a casual call over to Bardock, the mother Saiyan tosses him yet another of her downed opponents to be cared for, and retires to wait for the last match. Sweat dropping as they're now the follow-up for that last match, the next mother-son duo of tournament rivals take the stage, standing off for a fight that suddenly feels a lot higher stakes to both of them. However, while Moley doesn't let this sensation bother her, having already prepared for the weight of this match, Granolah becomes tense and furrows his brow in a way that makes her actually chide him, citing how she's never really been a hands-on and doting mommy like Gine, but at this rate, she's worried the kid is going to have more wrinkles on his forehead than Grandpa Gohan. The Crane Sniper brushes this off as a meaningless detail in pursuit of his goals, which his mom currently serves as an unfortunate roadblock to, so it's finally time he surpasses her, reaching up to completely pull off his weighted blindfold and let it thud to the ground outside the ring, ready to go all out. Moley responds to this declaration of war with more motherly teasing, making fun of how smooth a line that was from her baby boy. I was guessing that must be how he got that pretty girl to join his school, for once being able to comment and laugh at just how like his father her kid is. Both of them. To which her son is left rather confused. Brushing this aside herself, the mother drops into her stance and encourages Granolah to come at her, which he does for a seemingly straightforward charge, only to use a crane dance to circle behind his mother for a killer roundhouse. But to Moley, after the last year of training, this is child's play to intercept and counter faster than Granolah can react at first. And when he's sent stumbling back, Moley steals that crane dance maneuver to pull off a successful kick in the back of the head that sends him sprawling and clutching it in pain. Evidently thrown off by just how much Moley's fighting style has changed thanks to training under Flake, and the anticlimactic match with Minaito not showing it off. Other tricks yield similarly unimpressive results, as splitting power with multiform is out of the question, and fancy flying or trick shots are no good against someone who can see or shoot just as well as he can, if not more efficiently. Now that the mother Cerelian is boasting some proper first-hand training of the Cerelian martial arts, her technique and finesse outstrip Granolah's even further, despite his maintaining the advantage in sheer talent and the brutal force of his criticals. As such, the battle begins to trend much like the last one, with Granolah going the same way as Goku, as it seems youth won't be enough to triumph here. But the Cerelian son refuses to let this happen, and so with no other options, resolves to use his new power once again, which the mother Cerelian intuits before he even does it, crossing her arms, with a conflicted look of disappointment and pride, saying she can't believe he can really use the bloody eye, as she reaches into her pocket and pulls out a black scarf. In shock at his mom actually recognizing this power, Granolah asks her to elaborate on it, but Moley admits she doesn't know much, other than his father and many other Cerelians once strove to obtain it as well, but very few ever had, so there's overall little known about it, even its true name, simply that it can be dangerous as the user runs the risk of losing sight of everything they hold dear, hence the name Forbidden Red Eye, since it's only supposed to keep getting stronger as more of the user's potential is brought forth, or so she's heard. So superstition or not, she doesn't want him relying on that power any further. If it wasn't dangerous enough, he's obviously not ready for it. So to prove that to him, from here on, they're battling as fellow Cerelian warriors, a claim Granolah bristles at, as he's suddenly conflicted. Curious as to why the air of the battle has noticeably changed so much, the announcer and everyone else look to Bardock again, as ironically, whether conscious of it or not, he would be the third most familiar with what's going on with these specific aliens, though he too is stumped and enthralled, eyes locked on the battle, as Moley and Granolah burst back at each other at speeds beyond any he's seen from either before, grabbing onto one another's scarves, and rather brutally for their people, slugging each other back and forth in a brutal attempt to make their familiar opponent let go. The battle suddenly becoming as fierce as any between sworn enemies on equal footing. As to Bardock, the cost of Granolah's bloody eye is apparently fully worth it, if it allows him to so confidently close the gap, as from what those able to keep up can see. Granolah is suddenly predicting everything Moley throws at a perfect, and when she tries to do the same in mirroring him for a Dodon ray, she's not prepared for his sight to allow him to fire his beam precisely at her own weakest point, splitting it down the middle to strike her clean. But this still isn't as tough as fighting Celica, Flake, Bardock, or Gine, so deciding to simply hold her breath and relax into the danger rather than panic away from it, she suddenly fires another ki blast with her free hand down the exact same path as Granolah's ray, his precognition warning him of the motion to do so far slower, and seeing him clipped across the chin hard enough that his head is thrown back and his brain is jostled a bit, knocking him back into his base form, as his attack falters as well. Recovering, the mother and son warriors glare, as they've come to a fierce impasse. But Granolah asserts that he's fine with being compared to a father he never really met, even that damn scarred saint, but he won't let anyone, even her, stand in his way of surpassing those people. While Moley, sounding a bit like Bardock herself, growls that it's far too early for her brat to be saying that to her, so she thinks a nap will do him some good. And so in another burst of outrageous speed, for a follow-up series of after-image strikes and Z-vanishes, each wagering on hitting the other in a critical spot, or an opening for an attack strong enough to cause a ring out, until ultimately youth seems to slip up in the face of maturity, since Moley's greater patience allows her to see through Granolah's final feint, in order to land home a hit to the stomach, meant to win and render him unconscious. Except, that wasn't youthful impatience on Granolah's part, but recklessness, as much like Gine did to Flake. Granolah wagers on intercepting this blow with his hands and body, or with a devious smirk, he grins that he gets the name Bloody Eye now, as a red tear leaks down his face from the strain of reactivating the forbidden form, smarting off that unfortunately for his dear mother, he can still see her quite clearly. Then, a blisteringly fast palm strike of his own is launched as his final revenge counter, possessing enough force to win her bad enough that she's she's unable to prevent a ring out, giving Granolah a narrow victory snatched from the jaws that a feat the crowd goes wild for. So much so the officials actually have to calm them down, while Granolah's eyes are seen to, and preparations for the finals are made after a short intermission. Standing up on the grass outside the ring, Moley continues to gaze worriedly at her boy, reminding him that no matter what, she's proud of him as he is, and requesting he be careful and think about what she said. With her work done, Moley steps off to collect something she'd left backstage and take her stuffy scarf off, huffing that she never did envy the Warriors for having to wear them all the time. Suddenly, the voice of Bardock chirps out of curiosity over her shoulder, admitting he never noticed till now. And suddenly, just like the last tourney, the two are alone back here. To which she freaks out a bit at this casualness, biting back that it's not like he was sightseeing while trampling everything, deflating a bit visibly. The Saiyan apologizes, able to recognize his own insensitivity in this issue, and explaining he just came back here while they've got a couple of minutes to make sure Granolah, Gine, and she got patched up if they needed to. At this concern for her, Moley softens, a bit hesitantly saying that it's okay, she shouldn't keep snapping at him about something he's only expressed remorse about. A bit shocked by this, Bardock asks if it's really okay for it to be okay though. By this point, more than able to understand maintaining a grudge and hating someone forever. But for the first time to his face, the Cerelian survivor admits that she doesn't want to hate him anymore. And besides, it's getting hard to maintain. Chuckling, Bardock muses that all that fun with Gine is probably a decent reason why she's feeling more relaxed and forgiving these days. In red-faced shock and embarrassment, Moley mutters that Gine told her he'd find out on his own eventually, but never said how. To which the scarred Saiyan points to his nose, reminding her that Saiyans are about as good as earthling bloodhounds when it comes to scent, and the two of them smell a lot more like one another these days, while handing her half of something he calls a sensu bean, stating it'll help her recover. Now thoroughly embarrassed, as she feels a bit immature sticking around, the Cerelian asks why he didn't say anything until now, since she thought she was a cosmic cop block, getting him to deadpan that she most certainly was. But at the same time, relationships, sex, and having children are pretty different concepts for Saiyans than for Cerelians or Earthlings. Their society focused everything on battle. They even stopped having kids be carried naturally, since it took half the fighting force off the battlefield temporarily or endangered the young. And some Saiyans purposely took on multiple mates to have as many kids as possible, in vain attempts to have their offspring fulfill their ambitions or obtain glory for their lineage. So needless to say, when he first got to this planet with nothing but revenge on his mind, his motivations towards that stuff weren't pure, compared to any other Saiyan meathead at least. So what's the harm in letting Gine and her enjoy themselves simply for the sake of it? They've been through a ton, no small amount he put them through personally. Suddenly more red in the face than ever before, Moley resolves to recover her strength with this gift from Bardock, and then confess her feelings for him. And now she wants to help him relax and enjoy himself more as well. But as she marvels at the revitalization she goes through thanks to the sensu, she also experiences being on the other side of a cosmic cock block, as Bryce Lieu suddenly appears and asks cheekily behind her mask what the two of them are speaking about so cozily. Bardock though smiles, seeing the masked Saiyan is seemingly still firing on all cylinders for the finals, which will allow him to save his sensu for now, while Moley lets her friend know the two of them are having a much needed one-on-one. At this, Gine giggles sinisterly that this is good, waving at the two to not let her interrupt, as she'll explain Bardock being late to join back up with the commentary for him, before she proceeds to join and recover Granolah out on stage. As the fervor is still so great, no one even feels like waiting on Bruce Chun to return before the match begins anyway. Sizing up his opponent carefully, Granolah takes in the journey it's taken to get up to this point, and as if he can do this, the number of people he will need to surpass in order to be the unequivocal strongest will shrink significantly. While Gine is not as in the loop about the specifics of the eye thing Moley was so worried about, or the pursuit of constant betterment that Bardock was, she can at least recognize that what her adoptive son needs right now is a reminder of why he should really want that power, forming a plan to accomplish this before taking the proactive position and rushing Granolah, who attempts to preempt and counter her attack by instantly activating Bloody Eye, seeing no other choice for an opponent this strong, allowing him to land a series of critical blows in a split second that blow Bryce Lieu flat on her back, at least for a second, as the woman jumps back to her feet, the same time that pain from hitting someone so solid hits the Cerelian. And when she rushes back at him on all fours to continue another flurry of attacks with him, she's fast enough to keep up with her precog ghostly self, making for visual clutter, even his swiftest of whip-like strikes that cause his bones and muscles to ache in protest of being asked to flex unnaturally and break the sound barrier do little against this beastly Saiyan. Surprised by this, Granolah takes a closer look at her ki and recognizes it suddenly has taken on that same wild quality as Raditz during his last attack. However, a bit more refined, as Gine has also seen Celebi wield this power with more experience. The sensation that the boy is actually now facing Ozaru itself, suddenly dredging up traumatic memories that nearly make him hesitate as he steps back and prepares a large ki blast that shines frighteningly bright in the dark. At the same time, the spirit of the Saiyans gives extra bravado to put towards the act Gine is putting on, as much like last time, Bryce Lieu proved themselves a villain at worst and an anti-hero at best, as she chides that it's pathetic how little power that transformation of his brings out around, not caring like his mommy whether it's good for him or not, as long as he can use it to keep her entertained. But it's almost as if he's focused on the completely wrong thing, and it's making him far less interesting than runty Raditz was. So she's gonna kick things up a notch to get him in gear, as this time, when she crouches low, it's to withstand the volatile force her aura gives off, warning that she's gonna expand it into an explosive wave, big enough to wipe this island and everyone on it off the map, evidenced by the ring and foundation under it beginning to quake and shatter into dust from her energy rampaging wild. In shock, the crowd gasps and murmurs, still too unaccustomed to these light shows to know if this is real or not. So it's particularly good when Bardock and Moley arrive next to the announcer in order to take the mic and declare it may be best if all the fans got back a bit, or better yet, ran, as they aren't sure what Gine is trying to pull for Granolah, but evidently trust in her. As for the Cerelian boy, he isn't given long to think about the various factors that fly through his head, such as the fact that he's suddenly very certain this woman cannot be Gine, or the fact that countless people other than Master Tao, Tien, Chaozu, Launch, and even Shin and their other earthling friends can't survive this, or how badly his family may be hurt even if they do, or even his own inadequacies in that moment, as his body simply moves on its own to use this power for the most primal and pure purpose he can think of, to do what he can do, canceling his own desperate attack and instead dashing with the most confidence he's ever had in his sight at the weakest point in his opponent's aura to break inside and attack her, taking the full breath of the unexpanded wave on himself and forcing her to share it with him, thanks to a perfectly placed critical hit to the masked face. This sees both fighters seemingly blown out of bounds as the arena shines bright in the night and is hit with a gust of wind and dark smoke rather than being blown completely to smithereens. And when that smoke clears, it reveals both fighters had indeed been nearly wrung out, clutching onto the stage edge with their fingers and toes as they glare at one another across the destroyed stage. Bryce Lieu silently, despite looking just as worse for wear, as her broken mask chips away once again, while Granolah is panting heavily, with burnt bloody tears running down his face, back in his heterochromatic-based form, though deprived of the light in his eyes, as it's clear he's already burned up all the stamina he recovered from his half of a senzu bean, just to make it this far. Thus, he can only laugh that now he gets what his mom meant by losing sight of what was precious to him, as with no energy left to even stand, he allows unconsciousness to claim him, and flops out of the ring, ending the 20th Tenkaichi Budokai with a now two-time reigning champion Bryce Lieu. Pride, shame, effort, sacrifice, weakness, transformation, strength, love, friendship, devotion, treasure, hardship, failure, and victory. In this tournament, all these things clashed and were exchanged equally, rendering all present to experience the event different than beforehand, regardless of the winners and losers. The remaining members of the crowd therefore go wild with applause one final time, as despite it all, the mysterious masked fighter has never failed to give an unforgettably good show. However, this time with the consequence that the tournament staff have to announce that they may have to either go back to the old schedule of 5 years between tournaments, or postpone indefinitely for repairs. A statement which deflates Gine's Bryce Lieu persona quickly, as she apologetically offers to donate the prize money to repair funds, stating her family owes this tournament ground a lot. Hearing this, Bardock is a bit disheartened, since the winnings from last time were fairly helpful, but he can't fault Gine's logic there, and more importantly, he's exceedingly proud of both her and Granolah. Hell, of all his friends and family, a feeling Moley echoes, as she carries her son while he sleeps, with that same satisfied smirk he had when he went down, his mother noting awkwardly with his guard saying how big he's gotten. As the slowly crumbling stadium is cleared out, Gine conveniently makes a reappearance in her normal clothes, unfortunately unable to hide at least some of her exhaustion and wounds, but thankfully, her co-parents are willing to cover for her as they did Bardock last time, getting the conversation back on track to their pledge to continue their party from earlier, since even Raditz insists Granolah's performance was just as admirable as his own, if not more. But he eyes Launch and Bulma as he insists no one better tell him he said that, causing our heroes to laugh so hard as they depart the Caps Corp. They don't pay any mind to the large and small cloaked figures still watching them intently, though just as the group prepares to take off for West City, Gine remembers she left the duffel bag she borrowed from Bardock back at the arena changing room, which is likely now destroyed. Seeing her powder, she's extremely hungry and doesn't even really want to cook, more than happy to let the brief's caterers handle the victuals for once. Hearing this, and knowing what's likely in that bag, as she's already guessed the true identity of this tourney's Bryce Lieu, Chi-Chi attempts to be a little helper and go and get it for her, but her father insists it's far too dark and dangerous for a young lady to be out sifting through rubble so late at night. Thus he'll go for his sweet daughter, though ultimately, it's Annan who proudly mentions her hubby has no business going to get another woman's unmentionables. Plus, she is intimately acquainted with both the dark and danger, though winking at Gine, it's clear she's more intent on showing she has her back. Thus, she zips off into the air to show off her own flight, assuring she'll meet everyone at the party, so don't wait up. And with that, they temporarily part ways, still abuzz with excitement. As the adept flyers cruise alongside Grandpa Gohan and the Brief's flying vehicles, everyone is still brimmed with excitement over the tourney, the good food they'll soon eat, and seeing Dr. Wheelo again. However, in the middle of the conversation, both Chi-Chi and Ox King suddenly freeze up with a look of horrible greed and foreboding growing in their eyes, as if they're suddenly seeing an out-of-control fire. At which point, as the person most skilled at key sense amongst them, aside from the slowly waking up Granolah, Bardock is the first to feel what the Ox family members do, a sense of panic gripping him, as he too suddenly zooms back towards Papaya Island and work, as everyone else slowly realizes like him that Annan's key is suddenly fading fast, until ultimately, they They can't feel it at all. As he speeds up in worry of a family friend he's well aware can't cheat death again, Bardock arrives just when Archie is snuffed out completely. Seeing him land in the ruins of the tournament arena he just left in hopes it will soon be repaired. So hard the crumbling structure is finally put out of its misery and leveled to the ground, the Saiyan demanding to know what the hell is going on here. As before him, Devilman now faces off the two cloaked figures, standing over the slain body of Anon. But that's where we'll be leaving this one off for right now.